But first, there's some news that's been shaking up the boxing world. In the specifically the finances, the economics of boxing, with the subscription-based services that we want to cover, including Triple G signing with DAZN and Tyson Fury signing with ESPN Plus.
So we've got Canelo, Triple G are both on DAZN now, I believe.
Yes, sir.
So we've got ESPN Plus has Deontay.
Tyson Fury.
Tyson Fury. I'm sorry.
They got Tyson Fury.
Deontay has decided to not sign with anyone because he wants to maintain the freedom to jump between the different ones. I believe.
That's what he said. He likes the freedom to be able to schedule a fight with anybody in any circumstance, which is perhaps better talk than reality, because now in order to sign a fight, these other organizations, your ESPN Plus, for example, are trying to get multi-fight deals in order to secure the one fight. But in addition, DAZN has Anthony Joshua. Who else? I feel like do you mind pulling that up? Just seeing who's with DAZN, because they've got a bunch of big time investors behind them, and they've really made a concerted effort to shake up the boxing world. The sport of boxing has fallen behind the economics of modern day consumption and the pay-per-view model, as you have asserted, Jeffrey.
So they've got Amir Khan is actually fighting for them. I didn't know that either. Anthony Joshua. They've got a good amount of fighters here. Daniel Jacobs also. So that
makes sense for the Jacobs-Canelo fight.
Canelo Jacobs is going to be not free, but you're going to pay for that for a subscription.
Yep.
And then you're going to be able to watch him potentially rematch Triple G through subscription. They've got Derek Chisora, Dylan White, Felix Cash. There's a lot of fighters here that they have. Wow, they have a lot of Jarrell Miller. There's a lot of fighters on DAZN. Jesse Vargas, Jono Carroll is a DAZN fighter.
It's wildly important for boxing.
Kell Brook.
It's wildly important for the survival of boxing as a mainstream sport, which it's kind of fallen out of, to modernize the way that it's distributed. The pay-per-view model has not been an effective mechanism by which...
Tevin's a DAZN fighter too?
Apparently.
Damn.
But the mechanism of distributing boxing content has not been sufficient to support enough superstars in the sport for there to be a constant public eye directed toward it. What a service like DAZN or ESPN Plus is doing is, for a nominal monthly fee, you're able to...
$9.99 a month.
$9.99 a month. You're able to have access to a wide number of fights, sporting some of the sport's best talent
too. It's not like you just have to watch. It's not like you buy it on your TV. You have to watch it on your TV. They got phone, PCs, tablets, your game consoles, all that.
So we see them both addressing the fact that the pay-per-view model is inadequate, and also embracing the technology we now have at our disposal to help revitalize the sport. And it is bringing us Jono Carroll and Tevin Farmer, along with, hopefully, some other fights in the future. But it has fragmented heavyweight boxing because of the lines drawn by Tyson Fury signing with ESPN Plus, while Anthony Joshua has signed with rival provider DAZN.
Yeah, well, I think it becomes interesting with the fighters being represented by different people when you're trying to make these fights, because it gives you the weight that you won't normally have as an individual. And I think a lot of this traces back to people seeing Floyd make so much money as his own promoter. And one of the things that I think this also is pertaining to might even be the contracts that are being signed in other sports, where you see these huge $200 million contracts and all this type of stuff for these.
Bryce Harper represent $330 million, 13-year deal with the Philadelphia Phillies.
And you see that
Philly versus everybody.
When you're a individual in a sport where you're not in a team sport, and you see these guys getting paid all that money to do this stuff, and you're like, well, they're on a team. They're not the only person driving all these views. So why would I sit here and take no money when there's no outfielder, there's no other baseman or batter to do anything for me? So it makes these young men realize that they have a value and they want to seek that value, and it
provides financial security beyond the next fight too. Yeah. Boxing or mixed martial arts or whatever combat art, there's a fragility to the competitor because their value fluctuates so wildly based on the fight. If you're winning, it's great, and you can command basically a purse of your choosing. But if you've lost your most recent fight, you lose so much negotiating power. Tyson Fury, by signing this multi-fight deal with ESPN Plus, for example, even if he loses a fight, there's a ton of guaranteed money on the table. Same thing with Gennady Golovkin. He has an 8-figure deal for the next 5, 6, 7 fights that's going to capture him for the next number of years. So even if he starts to tail off in this latter stage of his career, he has financial security that's going to carry him through. And it's a more modern way, and it's a better way for athletes to secure their own futures.
And I also think that it gives the promotions more the ability to entice fighters with the money up front, because of the fact that when they see revenue being generated not by your pay-per-views, by how many people you bring straight to your fight, but by the fact that they have a subscription and that there are now other people that can help bolster the amount of money you make, what that does is that takes someone. So ready, say I'm gonna bring this one back. Say you're TJ Grant. You remember TJ Grant?
Wait, are you talking MMA?
MMA. This is just an example.
Okay.
No, this is. Yeah.
No, I'm going to give some context here, because our listeners here are boxing listeners, and we're not bringing MMA fighting into the dialogue here. But TJ Grant suffered a bad concussion in one of his fights, and he was at the pinnacle of the 155-pound UFC division, but has been held out of competition for years now because of the concussion symptoms he suffered, therefore losing a lot of monetary compensation in the process.
Yeah, and it brings the interesting fact that if he had been able to access the fact that he had signed a deal to get a guaranteed amount of money, that would put him in a much better position than he would be in right now. And that stupid little small thing in and of itself is huge, because that takes a fighter who may not be able to drag that many people straight on their own to a pay-per-view, but may be willing to sign a deal for an amount of money that they can get up front and be able to show up and get there. It's just the security of the fight. The security for the fighter is so much greater, I think, in the sense of when you belong to a brand outside of yourself when you are starting out. I think that this gives the streaming aspect gives a fighter a lot more strength when you don't have the ability to market yourself as well.
I agree with everything you've just said. In addition to that, we're getting to something that transcends boxing and deeper into just consumer behaviors. The pay-per-view model, as you have said, is outdated. The days of people paying $60, $70, $100 per an event is going to be the exception and not the rule. So what we're seeing now is guaranteed money, which is a big trend across sports, whether it's baseball or whether it's football, where guys are pushing for bigger sums of guaranteed money, or now combat sports. There's a new paradigm that's being created, and ESPN and DAZN are seizing upon that because they realize that these sports are still wildly popular, but the ways in which they're distributed does not meet the patterns that the consumers follow. So they are revolutionizing things, and they are going to usher in a new era of prosperity for combat sports that is going to benefit both the consumers and the fighters. However, there are going to be issues when you have rivaling parties like DAZN and ESPN, where you want to see Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury fight, or you want to see Deontay Wilder fight either of these guys. And ideally, Deontay Wilder will get the biggest pot because these two rival promotions want the biggest fight available to draw in that kind of compensation. At the same time, though, we're looking at the volatility of combat sports where Deontay Wilder is one hell of a puncher and might be better than both of these guys. So ESPN wants the security of, okay, if you beat Tyson Fury, well, we want to have the best heavyweight in the world. So we want this 5-fight deal. So if you beat our guy, you're still with us. And DAZN is going to want a similar thing, to where if he fells Anthony Joshua, it's important for them to not lose the dramatic amount of capital that comes along with having an undefeated heavyweight superstar.
You know, this is actually really funny. This kind of reminds me of like pro wrestling, where it's like you have these dudes that are in like the WWF, who are in like the WWE, all this dumb stuff, and it's like the idea where all these dudes would be a champion or be good, and they would fight all the people in the organization that they're under, and then you could make an event out of literally fight. Like you could say, all right, we have all these heavyweights under DAZN, and there's a bunch of these heavyweights on ESPN Plus. They could easily, if they wanted to, all right, let's make a pay-per-view where we have the best fighter we have of our heavyweights versus the best fighter from this heavyweight. And it opens up an avenue to give you a reason to charge an exorbitant amount of money for a pay-per-view instead of it just being, oh, look, it's...
You know, I've never thought of that, but that's a spectacular idea, and maybe the only reality in which the pay-per-view is going to exist for combat sports in the future is mega crossover events. Say ONE FC has a couple. Okay, we're not going to get into mixed.
Like Conor McGregor with Floyd Mayweather. That's the type of thing. Those are the type of fights where
crossovers, whether it's boxing versus boxing organizations, mixed martial arts versus boxing organizations, mixed martial arts organizations. That might be the domain where the pay-per-view still has life. But in terms of the common event, it doesn't fit the modern consumer patterns that exist today. It also doesn't fit the issues people like that come with the diversity of technology, with being able to consume the programming on multiple devices, like a smartphone, like a computer, like a tablet, like a television.
Netflix makes so much money. Netflix has money to pump out movies all day.
Well, you also see Hulu that's expanding now into Hulu does sports. Joel Embiid literally changed his name. Joel Embiid, Philly, represents just the process. Changed his name on Philly from Joel the Process Embiid or whatever it was on Twitter, rather, that is, to Joel Hulu does live sports. Because it's a big deal how these streaming services are integrating their way into common or modern consumer behaviors.
And you make way more. We were right before we talked about this podcast. You make way more money with 10 million people paying you $10 than you do with 150,000 people paying you $50 or $60.